Maxim here, and I'm back again with some more WICSO. Now, in today's video, I sadly bring you all very bad news. Just like what happened within some of my few episodes, I lost all of the footage for episode 9. Now, as y'all may see over here, this clearly a lot of stuff happened. So what happened? Well, before I tell you all what happened, I gotta tell you all what happened to the recording. So, mid-recording, for some reason, when I saved the recording for this video, for some reason, it suddenly just cut, like, half of the footage. Like, when I came to review the footage, it was like, the episode was like 44 minutes long, and when I came to check the footage, about half of that footage was cut off, meaning that you guys didn't get to see the peace treaty that happened in the midst of what I like to call the Great Middle Eastern War. Now, what was the Great Middle Eastern War that took place within this episode? Well, the Great Middle Eastern War was basically the large war that happened between Persia and that happened between Persia and the Orange Anatolian country against the Triangle Alliance, but also involved a bunch of additional members as well. Hang on, let me go ahead and fix the border here. But wait, whoops. But as I was saying, the war was very big. A lot of stuff happened. So I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what happened. And again, I am sorry if I lost the footage. So for that, starting over here in the Balkans, we saw the expansion of the Montenegrin country into what would be Bosnia. However, though, with Italy's recent aggression, this country decided to officially join the Square Alliance. However, they were actually invited by the Albanians to join the Square Alliance. Remember, the Albanians let go of Bosnia because they thought it was too mountainous. So they were basically inviting themselves essentially back into the alliance. Yeah, basically the Bosnians and the Albanians are the same people, culture, etc. It's just that the Albanians decided to give the people living in Bosnia their own independent country because they couldn't administer it. Elsewhere in the West, we saw a massive expansion of Villa and Valencia as Valencia started to consolidate its control in Morocco, and Villa consolidated its control over the northern half of Iberia, eventually reaching Galicia. We then saw the expansion of France, and this is actually where this mysterious purple country comes into play. Now, what is this mysterious purple country? Well, the mysterious purple country it was basically a secret country discovered by France during its expedition north. During its northern expedition, it moved around this area of like the Alps around like this area of the Alps, and they accidentally touched the border of this country, and this country had actually set itself up in secret during the interwar period, after following the Great Western War. Following the Great Western War, a bunch of Italian immigrants a bunch of Italian citizens living near the Alpine border decided to move up to the Alpines to create their own Alpine Confederation, basically as a kind of neutral country and as basically a safe haven from the tyrannistic actions of the Italian government. When France and these two countries met, now when France and the Alpine Confederation met, the two kind of had a brief war because France was like they wanted to come in. However, though the Alpine Confederation was refusing to let them come in, so in a bit of a dumb move, the French sent their troops into the territory, and from there the French and the Alpine Confederation fought until they eventually just decided to set up this demilitarized zone around this border. Yeah, there were no territorial changes, and yeah. Elsewhere, this northern Belgian country, which I like to call Belgica, was basically formed after France sent a bunch of expeditionaries to head towards Belgium. However, though, at the same time, a bunch of expeditionaries from the Alpine Confederation, who were kind of mad that the government of Alpenland did not want them to move north, decided to move towards the west. Whereupon they accidentally met up with the lost French expeditionary group, and from there they basically set up their own country, that being, well, basically Belgica. Moving east, we will now talk about the Great Middle Eastern War. Now, the Great Middle Eastern War started when Persia and the Orange Country attacked the Mesopotamian country. Around the height of the Orange Country, the Orange Country had managed to occupy, scarily enough, all of this land. So yeah, all of this land was at some point under the control of like the Orange Country. The Persian country, meanwhile, at around its height, managed to gain control of all of this. However, though, what led to their defeat in the war was, apart from India in the east kicking Persia's ass, it was primarily because the two countries, when the two countries began getting defeated on their mainland, the oligarchs of these two countries basically did not care, and they basically continued pushing their troops into the territory of Mesopotamia instead of retracting and instead of turning back and trying to defend their actual homeland territory. However, though, by the time that they got their head out of the sand, it was already too late, and eventually their soldiers got defeated, and the two countries surrendered. In the peace treaty, Mesopotamia got its original land back, as well as some more, and India also expanded massively. We also saw the Omanis getting this little strip of land near the capital to basically increase their trade and to also take control of the naval cannons that Persia had built along its coast. Oh yeah, by the way, these two countries basically received the Versailles treatment. Basically, these two countries are no longer allowed to have very large militaries, they're no longer allowed to ally with each other. They're basically pariah states, and they're basically isolated. Oh yeah, we also saw Armenia get a bit of a comeback as Armenia decide as Armenia as during in the middle of the war when because during the middle of the Middle Eastern War, when most of the Orange Country's troops were around this area, the Armenians decided to find an opportunity to attack and reclaim their old lands back. If you guys don't know, this is their old lands. They agreed on this border during the episode 1 during the Armenian Anatolian War all the way back in episode 1, and basically Armenia decided to reclaim its territories plus a bit more border territories just for additional war spoils, just as additional war spoils. So yeah. And now, did Persia and the Anatolian country reach the capital? Yes, eventually they did. And basically, even though they were being defeated in their own homelands, they decided to not surrender. However, though, during this time when they were like in when they were when they were deep into Mesopotamian territory, the Purple Country basically decided to join, basically deciding that enough was enough, eventually invading the Orange Country from behind, capturing the capital, and putting the Orange Country out of the war. This also meant that all of their troops around this front line were eventually started getting pushed back by Mesopotamia's troops. The same happened in Iran as they were being completely whipped around by India, and around their height, India managed to occupy around all of this territory basically. And by that point in time, the Iranian government was starting to collapse, and they eventually surrendered. Now, why didn't the Italians or the Libyans decide to attack the Purple Team and the Square Alliance? Well, the simple answer was that yes, minor border skirmishes did happen between Bosnia and Italy. However, though, upon seeing the combined forces upon seeing that the combined forces of all of these three countries were much more powerful than they thought, the Italians decided to step down from attacking the Square Alliance countries. Now, as for why Libya didn't mind Sicily or Carthage, that was primarily because they invaded Egypt. If you don't know why they invaded Egypt, well, this was because Egypt invaded the Mesopotamian Empire. Basically, when Mesopotamia's troops around this area were cut off by the Orange Team, the Egyptians decided that now would be would be a good opportunity to invade and attack Mesopotamia to reclaim their older lands back, as well as some more. However, though, just as they were doing this, the Libyans, greedy for land, decided to invade Egypt from behind, and eventually Egypt was crushed between the two powers, and in the end, the two nations decided to divide them in the peace treaty. Now, you may notice here in the south that Arabia's colony is independent. And no, this was not because Arabia let them go. It was because Arabia did exactly what Villa did to Valencia, and that was basically expand the army, and that was basically expand their colony to an exponential extent, only for the war support. Only for the war support. This basically meant that just like how Villa oppressed Valencia and basically exploited it for its war of independence against Italy, the Omanis did the exact same thing, expanding the territory of Somalia exponentially in order to supply their war effort against Persia without actually caring about the colonists they had sent down to Somalia in order to assimilate the territory. Eventually, during the final stages of the war, Oman had managed to basically conquer all of this land, basically, and but during the end stages of the war, eventually the Somali Revolution began, and it ended when Somalia did officially claim like the rest of the Horn of Africa. However, though Somalia's occupation zone, which again looked like this, they eventually relinquished it over to India in order to suppress and hopefully take Somalia under control. In the end, however, they only regained control of the coast, and in the peace treaty, Oman only gained this, while Somalia gained all of this. This. And now I actually forgot to tell you guys. And now I forgot to tell you guys like the post effects of the war. So let me tell you guys now. Well, following the Great Middle Eastern War, a lot of things have changed in the world. Now with the peace treaties, with the harsh terms imposed on Anatolia and Persia, the world is kind of beginning to see the Triangle Alliance as tyrannistic. Now, why would they think this? Well, it's primarily because they think that the peace treaties that these countries received were absolutely unfair. And now, is that a common view around the world right now, or at least around the known world? For the most part, yes. Most of the world sees the peace treaties as kind of unfair because if you don't know, by the time that the Circle Alliance surrendered, their governments had already been replaced by the civilian governments who were willing to actually negotiate with the Triangle powers in exchange for less punishment. However, though they were harshly punished anyway, and that was primarily because there was just a lot of chaos happening within the governments of Anatolia and Persia. And that was just because there was a lot of overthrowing, like going back and forth between the two countries' governments. So, yeah, that's basically what led to them getting unfair treaties. And with all that being said, I think that's gonna do it for today's filler video. Or actually, no, I'm actually gonna go ahead and to give you guys a bit of a reward in exchange for losing all the footage. I'm actually gonna go ahead and and do and sign some new alliances here real quick. So yeah. So first off, we will have the Notched Arrow Alliance that will be formed between France or rather Occitania and Villa. These two have been allies since their wars of independence against the Italians, and basically since then the two countries have maintained good diplomatic relations, and with the recent collapse of Egypt, Anatolia, and Persia, these two countries will officially sign an alliance, a defensive alliance against the Romans in the case that they will ever attack again. Oh yeah, they also decided to sign this against the Egyptians, against the Libyans, because Libya basically just increased its power by invading the remainder of Egypt. And speaking of Libya, we will actually see the Libyans and the Italians sign their own alliance, that being the Arrow Alliance, as the Italians and the Libyans will officially sign an alliance/treaty of understanding because both of these countries basically have the same worldview. They see the world as they basically distrust the world, and basically in order to combat that, their oligarchs want to do the same thing, that being to expand exponentially until their empires are so powerful that no one can contend with them anymore. So that's basically why they're going to sign the Arrow Accord. And without that being, or rather the Arrow, I guess the Arrow Axis at this point. And without that being said, I think that's gonna do it for today's video. Again, I am sorry if I stutter a lot, and I'm sorry if my words don't really sound, they don't really sound, like, great right now, or they sound pretty disconnected and rushed. Well, that's primarily because I just wanted to get this video out for you guys, because if you don't understand why, just look at my newest community post. Because if you don't know, I will be away for a month, so this is probably going to be the last WICSO video I will make for you guys this month. So I am deeply sorry for that, but I promise that once I come back, or if my vacation with my dad is postponed, I will continue making WICSO episodes. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, I am sorry if I sound like I'm not in the mood right now. But all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. See you guys!